In telling the story of our famous courthouse, we will review events leading up to the building of this structure. We find that the first settlers to this area were two families named Hughes and Ratliff. They came to Bowling Green in 1798. There were 12 members of the Hughes family and 9 members of the Ratliff family. Ratliff and Hughes kept very busy clearing the land for planting and building log houses to shelter 21 people. There is little known about the years between their coming and 1802, when William Schenck, a cousin of George Washington, laid out the village of Newark. At that time, it was part of a 4,220-acre section of military land which had been granted by John Adams to John Cumming, John Burnett, and his brother G.W. Burnett. They decided it would be a good place for a town. Much thought went into the planning, which resulted in the very wide streets for which we are most thankful. Most towns of that era started with a tavern alongside a wagon trail, then a general store, and a few log cabins. Mr. Schenck may have had a vision of Newark becoming more than just a county seat. When acting as power of attorney for General Cumming and the Burnett brothers, he set aside a public square for the village and specified that the land be used only for county or state use. In 1801, General Schenck wrote a letter to the Fairfield County Commissioners, our county seat then being in Lancaster. Dear Sir, I have contracted with a person who is digging a well as nearly in the center of the donation lots as I could find an eligible situation. This lot I reserved. I find it will have a just tendency to promote a speedy settlement, which is an object to be attended to at first, as it often decides the fate of new towns. Your humble servant, W.C. Schenck. Licking County was organized in 1808. Legislation that year called for a temporary seat of justice of the new county to be at the home of Levi Hayes, who lived about 2 miles east of Granville. About 1809, the first courthouse was built of logs with a sawdust-covered dirt floor and slab seats. It was a crude building and was what is known as a single-pen cabin, meaning that it was a square single room. This courthouse sat a few yards north of the present courthouse and was surrounded by stagnant frog ponds. At times, court had to be recessed due to the excessive noise of the frogs. The log building shown here is the Greene County Courthouse of 1803. Based on early descriptions, ours would have looked very similar. The small bell once used on our log courthouse is now on display in the West Courtroom. The village soon outgrew this courthouse. At about 1815, a second one was built. This was a 2-story brick building and measured approximately 30 to 40 feet square. The courtroom was on the second floor, and the first floor was used for offices. This courthouse looked very similar to the one shown, which was Ohio's first state house in Chillicothe. Soon after they built this courthouse, the village made it a law that no more buildings could be built on the square. This early zoning indicates that there was a lot of civic pride even at this early date. However, with the rapid development of the county, the second courthouse was soon outgrown. The third courthouse was built in 1832 by Mark London and Joshua Spaulding of Zanesville. It was a 2-story building of Greek Revival type, having 6 ionic columns on each end, east and west. The courtroom was on the first floor over a cellar and had its main entrance through a door on the south side. A Masonic Lodge Hall was located on the second floor. The courthouse in Mansfield at the time was identical, except it had 4 columns on each end. In 1837, Israel Dilley became mayor of Newark and caused the stagnant ponds to be filled in, the numerous tree stumps to be removed, and the grounds graded and leveled. On April 3, 1875, our third courthouse burned to the ground, possibly the work of an arsonist. The loss of the courthouse necessitated the building of a 4th courthouse, our present one, in 1876. The architect chosen was H.E. Meyer of Cleveland. Mr. Meyer was believed to be the most qualified architect that the county commissioners could retain to design the building. He had just finished the courthouse in Zanesville when he started drawing up the plans for the Licking County Courthouse. Mr. Meyer first submitted plans for a pressed brick building, but the commissioners decided to have it built using Sandusky blue limestone instead. The tower bell arrived in December of 1877. It weighed 3,000 pounds and cost $946. The dome for the courthouse was put in place in September of 1878. At approximately 5 minutes before noon on March 29, 1879, just 5 months after the courthouse was dedicated, the upper portion of the courthouse caught fire. In the course of the fire, the west courtroom suffered extensive damage. The southwest chimney fell through the ceiling of the courtroom, continued through the floor, and into the auditor's office below. Most of the original stained glass windows, busts, and paintings were destroyed and were later replaced as best as could be done in the rebuilding of 1880. The dome that is on the courthouse now is a Boston patent fireproof dome. Also, during the fire, the bell was cracked and was sent back to the foundry to be recast. The courthouse clock, a Howard No. 4, reached Newark in August 1878. The clock was destroyed by fire in 1879. The clock that we see today is also a Howard No. 4, and the dial is 1 foot larger in diameter than the original one. The cornerstone was laid on July 4, 1876, and the building was finished and dedicated on October 19, 1878. Within the hollowed-out cornerstone is a copper box containing coins, newspapers, documents, and other historic memorabilia of the day. In April of 1995, vandals destroyed the 119-year-old stone lettering on the cornerstone. In June of 1996, the inscription on the cornerstone was restored in bronze. There are 6 courtrooms in the present courthouse. On the ground floor, or basement, as it is called, there are 2 domestic relations courtrooms. The first floor houses 2 courtrooms also, the Juvenile Division and the Probate Division. 2 courtrooms are located on the second floor and house the General Division of the Licking County Common Pleas Court. Each room is attractive and well furnished. Although there are 6 separate courtrooms in the building, we will focus on the largest and most often admired. The large Common Pleas courtroom on the second floor of the building has been called by many the most beautiful in the state. It is ornate. The skill of the artisan, the genius of the architect, and the brush of the painter have all vied to produce a marveled and beautiful effect. The room itself is large, occupying almost the entire western side of the second story proper. As the courthouse itself has been called the centerpiece of Licking County, the large courtroom can be described as the centerpiece of the courthouse. And there is a human interest story in every item on the walls and ceiling. As we enter the courtroom, we notice that there are 2 murals on the upper section of the south wall. The first is of Moses and the 10 Commandments. The other mural on this wall is titled Solomon's Wisdom and shows Solomon deciding the rightful mother as 2 women claim the same child. This may well be the first child custody case. The relief on the lower level is of William Burnham Woods. Born in Newark on August 3, 1824, he graduated from Yale in 1845 and was admitted to the Ohio Bar in 1847. He became mayor of Newark in 1856. Later, he served on the state legislature as a Democrat and fought strongly for his party on every piece of legislation. Following his service as a general in the Civil War, he moved to Alabama for the healthful climate and there became a leading Republican. In 1880, President Hayes nominated him as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. He took his seat on the bench on January 5, 1881. Justice Woods is on the left end of the back row in the photo. He died on May 14, 1887. Next, we see a picture of General Rosecrans. Born in Kingston, Ohio in 1819, he was a general in the Civil War, commanding the Ohio-Michigan Volunteers. The bust of Salmon P. Chase is at the top of the west wall. Born in 1808, he was an American jurist and statesman. Chase served as governor of Ohio in 1855 and 1856. He was Secretary of the Treasury in Lincoln's cabinet and was later named Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Beneath the bust of Chase is the Great Seal of Ohio, the first legislature after Ohio became a state provided by law for a Great Seal. The act was passed on March 25, 1803. It provided for the design as follows. On the right side, near the bottom, a sheaf of wheat, and on the left, a bundle of 17 arrows, both standing erect. In the background, and rising above the sheaf and arrows, a mountain over which shall appear a rising sun. The state seal is to be surrounded by these words, "The Great Seal of the State of Ohio." The engraver who cut the seal departed slightly from the letter of the law. In place of one mountain, he made three, and he also placed a river flowing along the base of the range. The state capital was then located in Chillicothe, and it is a local belief that he used the outline of Mount Logan, which stands east of the city, for the central peak and represented the Scioto River, which washes the base of the hill. This story is probably correct. However, this design was changed by the Act of April 6, 1866, in that a new motto was added, Imperium in Imperio. Its meaning brought a great deal of objection. It savored the Southern states' rights doctrine, which was one of the dogmas settled adversely by the Civil War, then just over. The next General Assembly got rid of the motto by the Act of May 9, 1868. Ohio was the 17th state admitted to the Union. Therefore, the bundle of 17 arrows typifies the American Union. The sheaf of wheat is symbolic of agriculture, the state's original and still most important industry. The rising sun is an allusion to the advance of the state in wealth and power. The mountains are an allusion to the fact that this was the first state west of the mountains, that is, the Alleghenies. Though not authorized, the river is altogether appropriate, referring to the Ohio River from which the state was named. When the courthouse was built, it was decided to place 17 stars around each picture of a president from Ohio. The pictures of McKinley and Lincoln were added later, and in order to balance the two pictures, 17 stars were also added to the likeness of Lincoln. The next two items are the stained glass windows portraying the likeness of George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, thought by some to have been made by Louis Tiffany. On the north wall, we have a picture of Thomas Jefferson, also in a stained glass window. Jefferson was our third president and was born in 1743. He died July 4th, 1826. A sculpture on the north wall is of Andrew Jackson, our seventh United States President. Born March 15, 1767 in Waxhaw, South Carolina, Jackson was educated in the Settlement School and later the Academy. After Tennessee was admitted to the Union, Jackson was the first elected representative to the United States Congress. In 1822, he was elected to the U.S. Senate. Nominated for president by the Democrats in 1824, Jackson lost to John Quincy Adams. 3 years later, he again ran against Adams, this time winning a resounding victory. On March 4, 1829, Andrew Jackson was inaugurated as President of the United States. He was again elected president in 1832. On June 8, 1845, at age 78, Andrew Jackson died at the Hermitage in Tennessee. During the Revolution, when the war was not going well for General Washington, Benjamin Franklin made 3 trips to France to ask for help. France sent Lafayette, a French soldier and statesman, with a fleet of warships. They bottled up the British fleet at the Battle of Brandywine, which proved to be the turning point of the Revolution. We are very much indebted to France and Lafayette for our freedom. James Monroe was the 5th United States President. Born in 1758 in Virginia, he was a lieutenant in the Revolutionary War and was wounded at the Battle of Trenton. He served as president from 1817 to 1825, being elected to a second term by the greatest majority ever. James Monroe died on July 4, 1831, the third of our first 5 presidents to die on July 4th. On the lower north wall is a picture of our 18th president, Ulysses S. Grant. Baptized Hiram Ulysses Grant, he later changed his name to Ulysses S. Grant, the S probably standing for his mother's maiden name of Simpson. Grant married Julia Dent, whose father, Frederick Dent, was once a merchant in Newark. During the building of the courthouse, Grant was serving his second term as President of the United States. The bust of Henry Clay is on the east wall as well. Henry Clay was born in Virginia in 1778 and became a United States Senator in 1806. He was a statesman and three-time presidential candidate. At the top of the wall, we have the bust of Daniel Webster. History tells us that he and Henry Clay were both eloquent speakers and were usually on opposite sides of any debate. Beneath the busts of Clay and Webster are two symbolic paintings. The first is a harvest scene showing a father, mother, and child, and it is entitled Peace. The other painting shows the father going off to battle while the mother and child remain behind. It is titled War. These paintings were placed here in the restoration of 1905 and are signed by L. Bang. The other paintings are not signed. Below these paintings, we see the picture of Ohio-born William McKinley, our 25th president. While attending the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York on September 6, 1901, McKinley was shot and fatally wounded by an anarchist. He died 8 days later. Our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, was born in Kentucky on February 12, 1809. In 1860, he became the Republican Party's candidate for the presidency and was elected by a slight margin. While absorbed in a stage play at Ford's Theater in Washington on April 14, 1865, Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth and died the next day. Around the beautiful elliptic dome in the courtroom is a series of symbolic frescoes, the meaning of which has been lost to history. It may be that they represented the 7 deadly sins, and if so, what better place to display them than in a palace of justice? Another thought is that they are a warning, and may represent the decadence and fall of Rome, and that without the stabilizing hand of justice and acceptable moral behavior, our great nation may suffer the same fate. Art students from Denison University restored these murals in 1969. The likeness of Chief Justice Marshall, William Stansbury, Chancellor Kent, and President Harrison were in the original courtroom of 1878, but for some reason were omitted in the later restorations. The West Courtroom saw another major overhaul in 1890 and also in 1905, when the furniture, busts, and paintings that we see today were put in place. It was probably at this time that the pictures of McKinley and Lincoln were added. As a testimony to the great pride the citizens of Newark and Licking County take in their beautiful courthouse, they have started a traditional Christmas lighting ceremony. The lighting is paid for by donations and takes place each year to the delight of thousands of children and adults alike. During the Christmas holidays, the courthouse takes on the appearance of a jeweled palace rising into the dark night sky and can be seen from several miles in any direction. In conclusion, we would like to call your attention to the courthouse grounds. Unlike many such grounds, there are no cannon or statues of famous men. At one corner stands a marker commemorating the 10 Commandments. On the opposite corner is a memorial to John Lincoln Clem, sometimes known as the drummer boy of Shiloh, although his gravestone in Arlington National Cemetery carries the inscription Drummer Boy of Chickamauga. Johnny Clem, baptized John Joseph Clem at St. Francis Church in Newark, served during the Civil War at the age of 9 years, was taken prisoner and spent time in a southern prison camp. He was among the prisoner exchanges, eventually became general, and came home a hero, with many fantastic tales of battle. One of Newark's favorite sons, General John Clem, died in 1937. In recent years, a fountain, a gazebo, and an outstanding work of art titled Crossing Paths have been added. making Licking County's courthouse grounds even more attractive. And although not visible, a large time capsule was buried in the courtyard in 1987, commemorating the 200th anniversary of the signing of the United States Constitution. Mrs. Isabel Jarvis, an 84-year-old artist from Evanston, Illinois, first saw our courthouse in 1952. She was so inspired by its beauty and form that she made an ink sketch of it. It was the first of 123 courthouses that she later sketched in 48 states. The collection was titled The Beautiful Courthouses of America. After her death, the sketches were hung in the Smithsonian, giving our courthouse national recognition. She had always considered the Licking County Courthouse her favorite and one of her best works. Timeless and ageless, the courthouse stands as a monument to our judicial system and to our place in American history.